Hey everyone, I'm Moe. This will be a guide on the notorious racing mission from Mafia Definitive Edition. I'm on classic difficulty and I'm also on manual mode, so I will show turn-by-turn directions for the correct gear to be in, and the speeds for some of the corners. To make discussion easier, I will number all the turns and indicate the current turn at the bottom right corner, just above the map. Unfortunately, I didn't decide to include a controller overlay, but if that's something everyone wants, I'd be happy to do this race again with one. I am using a PS3 controller along with the SAP toolkit for compatibility. I've watched a few guides on YouTube for this race, and they all seem to demonstrate pretty poor racecraft and tend to use their cars as battering rams, which is very unsportsmanlike. So the winning attempt I'll be going over shows that you can win this race and show your opponents a shred of respect at the same time. The AI is pretty good at racing at this difficulty, but this didn't seem to translate into them pushing you off track often. In fact, I found they actually yield and sometimes slow down above a certain overlap. Even so, a couple of my attempts to win were thwarted with a shitty AI, but again, it's not frequent enough to ruin the fun very much. The theme of this race is conservative throttle use. If you want to go around this track quickly, avoid mashing the throttle until you're pointing in the direction you want to go. Full brake pressure will also make you lock up quite often, which requires quite a bit of counter steering to correct. Almost all the corners in this track will punish you for entering with too much speed or getting on the throttle too early. Remember to point the car in the direction you want to go before thinking about going full throttle. I also found that easing onto the throttle or the brakes made the car a lot more compliant and easier to handle. With that being said, we are ready to get started. Alright, first thing to note. So I tend to get my best starts by floating about halfway to red line and staying on half throttle for a couple tenths after starting before mashing full throttle. Pay attention to the speedo here. First gear is just under 60 miles an hour and up to second. Turn 1 is a long left-hander, don't worry about that for lap 1. You'll rarely need third gear for turn 2 and lap 1 as well, it's a bit messy. Now staying on the outside of turn 2 makes it a lot easier to get around the pack and leads nicely into turn 3. I'm back down to first gear and mostly coasting and modulating the steering before easing onto the throttle. Back to second. Now we're lifting off, turning in, out of turn 3, now full throttle. If you've made a good exit here, then you'll need to change to third gear at just under 95 miles an hour briefly before shifting back into second and braking for turns 4 and 5. The inside line into turn 4 is nicer, but it does depend on where the other racers are on the track. The green car is going dangerously slow, so we'll love to happen, but now into turn 5 and we'll slow right down to turn in, get to full throttle when we're pointing up the hill. If you've had a good pace, then the scripted crash to the right also shouldn't be much trouble. Now up this hill, and remember to shift back to third just at 95, and the braking zone is just over the crest. You will lose a lot of time in turn 6 if you brake too late. About 60 miles an hour is good. Take a lot of caution for the chicane at turn 7. The other racers will slow all the way down to 60 miles an hour, which you must also do if you want to avoid rear-ending everyone. Braking and exiting early is rewarded here. You can stay in second gear throughout this entire sector, which can be challenging to get the hang of if you're too throttle happy like I was into turn 8 here. Now we're very light on the throttle into turn 9 until we've passed this curb on the right, and pedal to the middle all the way to and through turn 10. Up to third gear at 95 miles an hour. Inside overtakes can still be done at full throttle, but I am at full left lock for the duration of that overtake you just saw. And that's pretty much it. If you just do what I did for 2 more laps, it should be a W. Now, approaching turn 1, and you have to turn in early if you don't want to fly into that cobble wall on the right. I'll get on the brakes just before we pass that brown building on the right, down to second, down to first, almost no throttle, and turn in. We're coasting all the way through here, and only now are we going to send it. Up to second at 60 miles an hour, and I'll get back up to 70 miles an hour before lightly braking down to 60, taking a nice tight line through turn 3, and back to full throttle. At this point, you know pretty much everything you need to. You should be able to win this race on classic difficulty in manual mode with what I've shown you here, and of course a bit of elbow grease. I guess there are a couple other things I can go over. I think you do get rewarded for drafting cars in front, and you'll find that in the last lap, I think it seemed like a pretty good draft that I used to get into first place, which I did just before turn 4 in the last lap. I could be wrong, I could have just gotten a better exit. You can be the judge of that. The other thing I want to go over is that chicane there. So, obviously in the second lap you still need to slow all the way down to 60 miles an hour. It's only in about lap 3 that you can take it quite quickly. You do have to turn in a bit early, but I think you can achieve cornering speeds as high as about 80 miles an hour through that turn when there's no one blocking you ahead. Yeah, so that's about it. I did do a few other runs, tried to get some better times. But you do have to compromise racecraft and respect to your opponents if you want to. The best time I could get while, remaining reasonably respectful to the opponents was about, I think it was a 4:31, about a 4:31.8. But the run you're watching right now will end up being something like a 4:39. So you know it's reasonably slower, but you still end up in first. So I'm sure you can go about an extra 10 seconds slower even and still manage first. So. Yeah, so that'll be it for me. I hope you enjoy watching the rest of this race. It's more of the same. Apart from that, thank you very much for being here, and goodbye.